see what happens. All right. Okay, sound like we started with a bad link out in the newsletter, so bad on us. We'll go ahead and record this as it is, send it out to everybody anyway. Uh, Kind of get started here real quick. And tell me if I'm too quiet or too loud or anything like that. As I kind of go through this uh, what's going on out there with tariffs is resulting in a lot of phone calls to the support team here, or a number of them, and then some direct conversations with myself and some others, working through all this. Basically, people are looking for a little bit of guidance, on how to use the system to track tariffs in different ways. I doubt very much I'm going to cover everything that everyone's seeing out there because this is a complex and evolving scenario. But what we're trying to do is pull it down to some basics. In other words, some things that most people already know how to do, just kind of point them out, and then a couple of new things actually that we've pulled together to kind of help this scenario. The audience for this, pretty much distribution would have using OASIS. Obviously, we'll get some advantage out of this because tariffs are affecting them. The lighting sales reps definitely are making a lot of phone calls. I probably won't get real deep into the Canadian Canadian groups that normally do importing, although I think a few U.S. Groups do imports and use OASIS to manage all that. Once it comes into a standard landing factor, then it's pretty easy. But there are some scenarios, but they seem to pretty much apply to what I'll show today as far as those scenarios. The only group that I probably won't suggest, well, the only group that probably won't be covered real well with this video will be the manufacturers. That's a little different conversation. So pretty much distribution, lighting reps, the importers will probably get a few things out of this as well, at least until this all settles down into a standard process there. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. Managing tariffs and guidance for managing tariffs within OASIS. So we'll get into some depths here. So have a little bit of an outline here. So tool and part of my PowerPoint, I like PowerPoints. I'm old school, I guess. But tools and techniques for managing tariffs. What I'm going to cover is when is the tariff triggered? We'll get into that a little bit more. And you're going to know that better than we are. But I want to bring that out because that changes your approach on what you're going to use as far as some of these tools in here. Price lists always factor into this. They're a great starting point. Quote features are important. We have a new feature called a charge manager that I'll show, and this should help a lot of folks with these. At least we hope it will. And then order creation, some things to consider in that area. What I don't have on here, and I forgot to put it on here, there are reporting concerns that I'll cover towards the end of this. Well, no, I'm sorry, I did put it in tariff reporting ideas. I just didn't have the future thing on here. So anyway, that's kind of the outline. And let's go and get started. So when is a tariff triggered? I wanted to cover this just real quick. And again, you all will be the gurus on this. And I strongly recommend that you talk to professionals that understand the tax and other legal consequences here. So it's just one of those items. But what you're wanting out of that, as far as the conversation with OASIS, is when is that tariff triggered? So on a quote, obviously you haven't triggered the tariff yet, but you do want to protect yourself for the amount of that tariff. That's a lot of the conversations that I'm hearing. So how do you reserve the money on that? And there's several scenarios I'll talk through on this. Obviously, if you're doing resale, you could end up with paying the tariff before you get paid, which is another conversation I've had with some folks. So on that buy, are you getting slapped with the tariff at that point? Less likely, but it is potential you get it on the sell. In other words, you have to cover the sell price with the tariff. I haven't heard too many scenarios on that in the case of resale. From what I've heard so far, once it crosses the border, then you mark it up, and then you can kind of get that after the fact. So, but again, talk with your tax advisors on that one. And then commissioned orders at this point, the biggest questions that I see out there, and it's just a lot of chaos with the manufacturers and like one rep I was talking to is like, the factories really don't know where any of this stuff is made, which is kind of an interesting conversation. But how do you kind of identify whether they've covered that in the price or if they're going to hit you later with it or whatever? So that's some other stuff to look at it. So really where we're trying to get to on a commission order is on the line item with the price, is the tariff included or not? And then how do you manage that change because the tariffs keep changing along this process. But sometimes there's a secondary method that gets to the charge lines I'll get in here, and then how often is the price updating? That's really what it's going to boil down to in a lot of cases for commission orders, or at least the conversations I've been having. So these are the things to think about. There could be more. And when I get to the end here, I'll ask everybody basically to contact us if there's other things that you see or learn or need help with, and we'll continue to help everybody as we dig deeper into this interesting little twist here. All right, so let's dig in. Price list and they're a basic fundamental feature within OASIS. And I don't have time to really cover them in depth, but there's a lot of secondary things about a price list that I want to kind of touch on, and they really dig into uh, how you can use that to tell you if something is a problem. So I'm going to just show you a price list and move on, and a couple of details here. But if you get those right, there's different features in the quotes and in OASIS Online and others that will really help you identify issues surrounding tariffs real quickly, or automatically is a better term. So let me go into pricing real fast and jump to my little test manufacturer here. Now, again, not going to go in all the details on this, but the main thing in here is we want to keep the price list up to date and fresh. One way you have to do that is that effective end date. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that it is up to date. If you have connectivity with the manufacturer, it's pretty much testing it. And one thing you can do to test and make sure that everything is coming in properly is you can expire a price list. That's actually pretty easy. If you go to the effective end date and set that back to any date in the past, all these little X's out here is a good example here. As soon as I do that, that effectively expires this price list. What'll happen are two things that are important. One is if the pricing is in there, it won't use it. It'll force itself to find a way to update it or refresh it from the manufacturer's system. Or if they're working with us, we actually have servers that push this data down to you as well. So that is one way you can do this, is just simply make sure the pricing is current. And one way is to expire the old stuff and let it pull in. Now, if you have a manufacturer where you're manually putting in the price list, the only thing we can really say is just make sure that there's the most current one in the system, because that'll help all these features we're about to talk about. Okay, so lots of details in here. I don't want to get deep inside the pricing inside of OASIS, but just making sure that it's fresh and up to date. That's unfortunately just part of the process that we have to go through here. If you have any questions on managing price lists, definitely give support a call. But this is a cornerstone we're going to build on right now. So I'll say no. I'm going to jump back into my project. I'm going to show you a couple of areas where the price list will help you identify that there are issues on the quote. So the first one, and this is true with orders as well, but we'll start with the quote here. So notice here I have a price that was pulled in prior to my price update. So I have to kind of manipulate some data here to make sure I'm not giving up somebody's secret price list. But anyway, fake items here. But notice the coloring. This is kind of I call it a burnt orange. It's not quite a red. But the main thing is it's trying to show that something's wrong. And the cell is basically below the minimum that we have right now for that item, and that's $110. Real basic concept here. But again, if you're keeping your price list up to date and the factory is including the tariff inside that pricing, all you have to do is update the price list. And by the way, when you open the quote, that forces the system to go out to those servers and update that pricing if, again, it's expired, and different conversations we can have on connectivity there. So again, one thing, if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. We have a few folks here that are actually watching this, trying to make sure that I get yelled at if I go too fast or anything like that. So basic concept there. Now, I could, by the way, if I want to, there's a lot of ways to go through and refresh the pricing. One quick way, if it's one or two line like this, I just go in there and click on it and notice it says, hey, I've updated my pricing. Basically, I edited the catalog number. Really didn't change anything. I just started edit mode. I say update. Now it's update to the current price inside the system. There are other tools inside the system as far as repricing. I don't want to get real deep into those, but All this is in there and it all predicates on the price list. Now, second item for groups that have OASIS Online, or what we used to call OASIS 04. More on that in a month or two. But we do have another option in there. So let me go ahead and bring up my, let me see, web view here. Let's see if I can get over to this. And that's, I don't want to go there. There is a tool or a tile inside of online. I just want to touch on, again, not get real deep into, but it's what we call the quote monitor tile. The whole purpose of the quote monitor tile is it scans your quotes and it looks for problems. Okay. Now we have a bad price. We have a expired manufacturer quote. Uh-oh, we'll get to that in a minute. Predicted shipping issue. Well, that's a whole different conversation. We'll skip for today. But I'm going to take a look at my bad pricing in here. And what it has done on my quote we were just looking at is it scanned it overnight and said, whoa, wait a minute, there's been a price change on this thing. And let me go into the details here. And it's going to tell me this one that I just did the change on, actually, the sell is below 110 bucks. And it has another one with another issue we'll get to here in a second. But what's nice about the quote monitor tile is it'll actually scan your quotes. And if you have, in this case, a price that is above what your lowest price is, and there's no manufacturer quote number on it, which we'll get to here in a second, then it'll pop it up here and say, hey, there's a problem. Okay. Now, there's a lot of other items on pricing that we go through. That's the main area I wanted to focus on as far as tariffs. Any questions real quick? Otherwise, I'm going to jump to manufacturer quotes. All right. Inside of OASIS, when you pull in a quote by hand, let me see, make sure I got everything. Sorry, context coloring. Okay, good. Now, quote features. So here's where I want to really get into. We've already covered the coloring on quotes, but now let's talk about a couple of different directions as far as the expiration dates. So first is your expiration date. We had a number of folks that just wanted their quotes to expire quicker. Okay. I don't remember how short they've gotten, but some of the folks are well short of the 60 and 90 days we used to talk about back in the day. I'm going to stay mostly in the desktop version of OASIS because that's what a lot of folks are probably using on this, just kind of gauging from some of the names I know in there. So I'm going to go into configuration software, and then I'm going to go into settings. And this is one I forgot, quotes and orders. And days from bid date to expiration date. So we have 15 days put in there. So I'll show you where this is at again, but the main thing is when you put a quote in the system or you update the bid date, the system will actually take this date here. I'll show you how we got here again and add, in this case, 15 days to it to create your expiration date. That is what appears on your quote that goes out to your customers. And obviously, if it's 90 days out, that might be a little risky right now with the changes in the tariffs and everything. So where did I get there? One more time. If you go to configuration software, you have to be an admin to see the software application there. Once you're in there, go to settings. And then there's all these different sections of the system that you're changing. So you want to go to projects and quotes, and then days from bid date to expiration date, just change that to what makes sense for your company and the brands you represent. Okay, so that's your expiration date on your quote. Now, if you use OASIS with a manufacturing way of connectivity, you're probably going to see the pop-up screen that I'll show here in a second. Or if you have an O2O file from a manufacturer, that's the XML format, or some other cool stuff we'll show mid-year. Basically, when you pull in the quote, it'll from the manufacturer again, it wants to import it. And in their quote, this is just a little test one I had, but in their quote, they're going to have, well, first of all, the stop and read and, make sure that everything looks right. Sorry, I didn't do all this stuff. I'm just say for now. All right. So you end up with this pop-up window here. And what I wanted to show real fast on this is right now we have this price that I'm getting for $12.50. So this is going to be my custom fixture here. Sorry, I had to make some stuff up and I kind of messed up on the brand here. But anyway, hopefully you'll get your brands correct. And I didn't get mine. So that looks good there. I'm going to say import. Actually, I'm going to just do an append to the quote. I'm not going to merge it with the line. So if you haven't been in the screen before, again, ask the support team. They can really help out here identifying things. And sorry, cell, I'm trying not to get too deep into this. Looks like we have level 1 on it. That'll work. Import. All right. Main thing I wanted to show here is when you do your import, it does a couple of things in addition to just pulling in the items. So we had a quantity 4 that was on that quote back from the factory. Fixture type B is what they sent back. I could have merged it with my type B, but I just wanted to call this one out by itself. Whatever their catalog number is, if they again have a corrected or updated the catalog number based upon their system, that'll show up here. And then I just pulled in the price. So it's a 12.50 at 10%. Again, it's a represented factory in that case. If it is something I'm buying that'll pop in another column. But the main thing is the quote from the factory is this number and the expiration date. That's what's important here more than anything else is that expiration date. So again, the factories are changing their quotes, expiration dates and pulling those in some cases because again, the tariffs keep changing on them. So on 5/27, that's when it expires. Okay. Notice what happened here above. I had already changed this one in the past. I did this manually when I was preparing for this. And I just put in a quote number of 234 for the factory that I was working with on this one. So it's a totally different factory. And in that case, I'm buying it. So it's basically the quote for that $100 per item for the sconces there. But it expired on 3/10 at 25. Obviously, I have a problem there. And that's the first thing you want to do when it comes to creating or adding this into your system is you will get warned on the screen that, hey, you have a problem here. You really need to take a look and see if they'll still honor that quote or what the damage is going to be if they, requote it. It will be $200 instead of the $100 I had. Who knows? So anyway, that's the main thing. Pulling the quotes, even if you're manually typing this in, that little extra piece of information can save you, especially if you end up finally getting the order from the distributor or whoever your customer is, contractor in case of distributors. And guess what? All those dates are out of date. Okay. Now, this is where the quote, any questions so far? Sorry, I'm looking up and around. Looks like none, at least in there. All right. Again, yell at me if you need to on there or just type in a chat out of the way. Now, back on that monitor tile, because I didn't want to get too far away from it. This is still the same quote, but it'll actually break out the different issues on the quote into different sections, but it all ties back to the same quote. But expiring manufacturer quotes, what that does is if you're pulling it in, if you're a distributor pulling it in, it'll pop in the dates for the rep's quote and when it expires. If you're a rep that's working with a manufacturer and you pulled it in using O2O or whatever it is you have there, it'll do the same thing. It's going to pull in those dates. Or if you manually type it in, the same thing. But what's happening inside the quote monitor tile, and again, I'll show you where I got to this. Set it up, and again, if you want to have, if you need to learn how to do any of the setup on any of this stuff, again, support's there for you. I'll click into this, and it says, "Hey, I have an expiring manufacturer quote." It'll list them out. Go into my manufacturer quote. It shows the one quote I have an issue with. I click into it. And sure enough, there is the factory quote that I had and expired on March 10th of 25. So the same quote I was looking at there a moment ago. Neat tool. And again, the whole thing, my main purpose is to show you different ways you can use the system to kind of help you identify potential issues that you have coming up. All right. So that's manufacturer quotes in the system. Pretty easy to use. The main thing is the features there and is quite effective. All right, let's get in here, see what I missed. So factory code monitor tile, charge line. Okay, so now here is where things get more interesting in my opinion. So when it comes to charge lines, I'm gonna get rid of this example line here for a second. We were tasked with a number of our customers early on with how to record a tariff on a quote. So if you're a rep and the manufacturer's covering the tariffs and just giving you different price list updates, you're okay. Basically, everything I covered will work fine. Now, second issue is you have the factory or you're doing resale, and you need to put some money on your quote and call it out as a tariff, just so you can have that money there. Now, again, you may have to change the quote later if the tariffs change or whatever. But the main thing is you want to identify that and separate it out on your quote in those scenarios. Okay. Now, what we decided to guide people to do is a little known feature in the OASIS quotes and orders called a charge line. So I'll put in a charge line real quick. And the original concept with a charge line basically is, custom colors and other little weird features like that. Basically an item or money on a quote that really isn't a lot price, because that usually is all the fixtures pulled together under one number. It really had to do with like a custom color setup charge or any other fee you have to pay the factory to do something that's kind of a one-off, or other little charges you get hit with. So in this case, we wanted to call out the tariff a little bit different and say, okay, well, what is this charge? Well, let's go ahead and type in tariff on this. Okay. Oops, sorry, on the type. Okay. And that calls that out as being a tariff line on your quote, and that'll carry over to the order. Okay. So now I know it's a charge, it's a tariff associated with it. Now I can decide whether I'm going to bind that to a factory or just leave it overall. Okay. And we'll get into some features here that kind of help with what I'm doing manually at the moment. So let's say that's just one factory that I'm trying to cover for. And then I can put in 120 or whatever it is, probably higher than that. I can do the math and I'll show you quicker ways to do this. Main thing is you're not going to get any commission on that. That'd be kind of cool. And obviously not going to make any profit off of that. If you do, let me know. That'd be kind of cool. But that is a charge line, and the way we are recommending people record tariffs on quotes, this does carry to an order the exact same way you see it here. In other words, it moves this charge line over and it says charge on the order, and it'll say tariff on the fixture type, which helps us later with some conversations. It only applies this one factory, and you can use this catalog number field here to say something like maybe I did a 30% on that one as far as the tariff goes. Any questions on that one? Because that's probably the key element of this whole conversation today. All right. Now let's go to the fun stuff. All right. At least what I consider fun. Because tariffs aren't fun. Let me remove my tariff line here. And because of this, we decided to, and it wasn't just us. We had a couple of customers ask us, like, well, this is all fine, but it's kind of a pain in the butt to keep changing all these tariffs out there. How do I automate this a little bit? How do I make it go a little faster? Well, as usual, we don't like to automate everything right out the gate, because that can cause secondary issues. But we did create a new screen that's in beta now. It'll roll out in the June update as regular. And it's kind of similar to the spread profit feature if you've ever used that in OASIS. So I'll stay with the first manufacturer, this RV manufacturer here, and I'll just manually select these two items, okay? And I'll go to Tools and I'll say Charge Manager, okay? And this is a feature, by the way, that we envision use actually beyond tariffs, but it's a nice starting point on this. We've had people ask for something similar for a while. So if we click on Charge Manager, we get a screen that looks very similar to the spread profit, as I mentioned before. And I'll stay with selected rows. I can say all rows on the quote, or I could go through and actually select a specific manufacturer I'd like to work with, like that RV one there. And then it goes through and it manually selects or automatically selects the specific lines you want on those quotes. Okay. Now, again, we want that fixture type to say tariff. We'll get to some more details here in a second, but for right now, we'll just do tariff. Okay. And 30% is what I'll go with on this one. Now, you have a decision to make. Is that going to be based on the sell price, the cost, or the net price? Okay. I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of folks that are very frustrated on how to make this decision. And what I'll simply say is, I don't know. But what I'll try to hint at is what I'm seeing most people do is either sell or net in the case of commissioned orders. Obviously, if you're doing a buy sell and you're getting hit with the tariff on the import, or as it comes in, however that happens, you'll want to do it off of cost. So, but that's usually resell. So this is a commission line. I'm going to base it on sell just to keep it simple for today. If I were to select net, by the way, if I had overage on these lines, it'd fall back to the O base price. So it works off of the distributor net type concept we usually teach reps about. Okay. So we'll stay with sell, and I'll hit update. And all it did is it did exactly what I did manually. It typed in charge, tariff, RV. It said tariff 30%, so it manually put in that little note right there. So I know there's the 30% price, 30%. So if it changes in a few weeks, you can identify it and add or remove whatever needs to happen. Basically, do the recalc on it. Now you put in $1,152. I'll let you do the math. I did it 3 or 4 times before I went in here, so hopefully I still have it right. So I'm good, other than the fact I probably should have updated my price there, but I will skip it for today and still kind of show that concept. So any questions over the managed charges screen? Because that is a nice ad that a couple of folks said, hey, that's what we need. That's what we want. So, and we confirmed it with a couple other reps out there too. Hadn't had a chance to talk to a distributor about this one, but it seemed like it fit for them too. Now, you don't have to use it just once. Let's say that one, I guess China's at 30% right now. I don't know. But let's say I have this other one, these sconces. Let's say I'm bringing those in from, I don't know, Canada or something like that. So sort of built north of the border and we're bringing them in. I guess it's 10% today. I don't know. So I'll go to Tools. I'll do a Charge Manager. I'll stay with the selected row that I had here. I'm going to say tariff on that one, 10%, and I'm going to base that on cost because I'm going to have to pay that tariff, and then I'm going to sell it to my customer after the tariff. So that's one way to actually maybe help a little bit, if you will, or I'll let you figure out the reasoning behind that because there's a lot of conversations going through my head right now. But I'll hit update. And we have charge, tariff, buy from basically the brands are the same. Tariff is at 10%, so it updated that for me. And notice what it is, it added in the cost right here. So I had four of them at $100, so $400 items, 10%, that looks about right, $40. And I added it to the sell price as well. So I basically have decided to go ahead and charge my customer that $40. I don't know if you do this, but if you zeroed that out, then it would basically you'd take money away from you in the system. So to track that, and then I'd be protecting my customer. Yeah, I know of some scenarios where that may happen, but by default, we assume that you're basically going to pass that tariff along to the customer. And that's the reason why I put it both in the cost and the sell price. So anyway, something to watch out. Are you covering it or are you passing along the tariff? Okay. Now, last thing you can do, most people know about these, but I decided I was going to show anyway. You can actually move the lines around, kind of put them close to the factories, or I saw one group, they were actually putting a kind of a note line in and putting everything down below so they could see all the tariffs down at the bottom of the quote. So again, probably the one thing you want to look at on some of this is just how do you want to standardize uh, what's going through the company. So if someone sees a quote or an order that has tariff on it, they know exactly what they're looking at and moving forward. So, but I didn't want to get too much into process today. All right, any questions about the new tool? All right, now let's get into, sorry. Okay, a couple of the things we had just kind of real fast, just for argument's sake, I'll just show the same thing in the web version of OASIS. I just kind of want to go through here because there's one thing in the web version of OASIS you can actually access from uh, desktop if you have both, which more and more folks do. But I had this one brand down here at the bottom, and again, I wanted to stay away from major brands and not really make people mad at me. But if I go to Folio and I go into Scope, what's nice about this system is we're starting to teach it how to look for different things. And I noticed a few minutes ago it got really busy. So a lot of people are doing smiddles today. But what it did is it shows this one product that I have in there. It's a fake product, so I had to make some stuff up here to show. And the main thing is it's going through and reading different things on the PDFs and putting them inside a consistent format. So you can quickly say, okay, yeah, it's this or that, or it has certain, color temps or whatever it is. So down at the bottom here, BAA and BABAA. We keep adding more entries in here based on feedback from folks. All we can say right now with Folio and when it comes to BAA and BABAA and IP65 about anything else, we just had the system's able to read the PDF and say, hey, it's on there somewhere, and seems to imply that this product has that capability. Now, unfortunately, you still have to go and see what the scenarios are because as we keep hearing from a lot of our customers, manufacturers kind of a mess out there. Some of them actually have, the catalog number has dash BAA in the middle of it, and that means, oh, that one's covered or going to be made. to match those regulations surrounding Made in America or Buy American Act. There we go. So anyway, details there. If you're in regular, desktop OASIS, you can do the same thing. If you have the online version of OASIS, O4 as we call it, if I go to scope here, it'll do the same thing and bring up the same details. So you can access it from either inside the online version or the desktop version. They both work. Okay, but you have to have the online version to actually see it. All right, I think that's it for quotes. All right. Oh, and I actually went through the whole charge manager. So cool. Went through that. It's a very similar spread profit feature. Went through all the various scenarios there as far as sell, cost, and net, and identified the lines to use. All right. Order creation. So this is where the obviously the tariff is triggered. So, well, bite my tongue. Could be triggered here. Factory may be covering it, whichever the scenario is. So the only thing I'd recommend at this point, I've had so many conversations with folks, I'm not sure exactly which direction to go here. Main thing is this would be a good time to review the tariffs on the quote to make sure that they work the way you think they should as far as moving them over. I'm going to create an order on this first one just to show how you can report on it, because that's going to be the secondary conversation here in a minute. So I'll take these first few lines and convert them over. The main thing is that charge line is going to come over, and you have to understand what you're going to do with it. Is the factory going to issue a new price that covers that tariff in there? Or are you just going to move it through and then that'll just be part of what the order goes over? I've seen both of those scenarios already. Obviously, if it's a scenario where you're doing resale, I'll do the top one anyway because it's just what I said I'd do. But the bottom scenario here, you have the sconce and then the tariff. You can actually use this line to track whether or not you've actually paid it. As a matter of fact, some people actually, because it's a resale line, they'll go ahead and flip this over to USA or Canadian or something like that, just to identify that you have to pay the appropriate folks on that one. So, all right, so let's go to customers here. Let me add in a customer. Here's my generic customer here. And they're winning. Yes. Fine. Nope, don't want to add another one. Items, so we're good there. And I'll go ahead and create one. Main one, I want to just do the simple one real fast and not spend a whole lot of time here. Okay. Sorry, we have a lot of examples here I'm trying to blow through real fast. So, yeah, it's just a commissioned order scenario. So pretty much works the same way when we're talking about resale. I can show you that one if you're interested. But the main thing I wanted to show is that charge line comes over as I showed before. Tariff is still in the fixture type. That's important for a conversation here in a minute. And the rest of it just kind of comes through and would go to the factory, and then they would actually deal with the tariff on their side as far as the next steps going forward. Any questions there? Trying not to get in some of the weeds here. Okay. Somebody's bound to, when they're not on the line here, say, hey, what does that look like? So it's just charge line. Looks like we need to fix the form. So I'll get to the folks on the, actually, I know what this is. I'm testing a new system here. So it looks kind of funky here. That's okay for today. All right. Main thing is it went out. That's fine. Save and close. And let me see. All right, manufacturer fine there, manufacturer quote. And so I've been through the bulk of orders. I didn't want to get too deep in that because there's a lot of different scenarios out here. My comment down the bottom is probably the best part of it is good luck out there. Do let us know what you're seeing as far as the orders going to the factories, because there's been a number of different conversations I had with different folks, especially early on. There's a lot of confusion. Now it seems like it's stabilizing in different areas, but let us know if you're sending the tariff line over. If pricing seems to be the main way most factories are handling it, at least for the reps. And then obviously if you're the importers, I'm trying not to get deep into those weeds at the moment, but let us know if you have questions there. Okay. All right. Reporting. So home stretch. So the charge line, the reason why we wanted to use the charge line is the charge lines are not shippable. So anybody trying to track shipping inside of OASIS, as soon as you flag that as a charge, it knows that it is not an actual physical item that ships. It's like the custom color charge that we talked about before, actually where the concept came from. So it knows that it's something that you're tracking. It's a lump of money. Nothing ships against it, kind of like a lot line. And then there's some other ideas that we had as far as reporting changes on how charge lines work. I don't want to get in the weeds there, but just kind of hinting around some of the thoughts going around there. Main thing is, does it count for you or against you as far as sales goals and such? So that's the area we're trying to get into. So definitely use a charge line. Outside of it having a different label, it pretty much works like a lot line, and it just separates out that money. Okay. All right, fixture types, using the fixture types. That's probably the main area that I'm using right now as far as adjusting the reports, because as soon as you do that, it opens a few doors as far as reporting. So the first one is I need to, let's say I just want to go back and see all the orders that are impacted by my manual tariff scenario. So let me go back in the system real quick, go into orders. And one of the customers called up here and said, how do I just simply track the orders that I have to manage these tariff lines on? Because they're one of the groups that had this tariff line concept. And it's like, well, whether you use the charge line or not, put tariff in the fixture type. So what does that do for us? So if I go into find and I say, hey, give me all the orders from this week, which is fine, and then I go to more, and there is a fixture type field here, and I say tariff. And as soon as I do that, I should get the two orders I have in my system. But hopefully you have a lot more, or hopefully you have less, but more orders. But main thing is now I can look at all these and identify what I need to do with those particular orders. And they were an importer, so they had to obviously go back around and pay those, which is a different conversation. I'm trying not to get too deep into right now. So with that conversation, though, we do know that there's been a few cases where tariff works, but some groups have been trying to split hairs on the type of tariff you're dealing with. Is it one that you have to pay because it's a resale? Or is it one that you're just simply managing and there's going to basically be a line on the order going to the factory? So there's different scenarios here. And I've had a couple of folks talk about doing tariff and then they'll change tariff-us, tariff-factory or something like that, just to separate the two out. But again, that's mostly for reporting, and it's just one way to go through and say, hey, how do I manage this mess so I can go through and do the next step, which is usually paying it or trying to see if it got processed or changed or whatever. So another thought there. All right. That pretty much covers the reporting for now. This is changing with conversations I keep having with folks. So you might check back later if you have questions on what you're seeing as far as reports. But again, this is all fairly new to everybody, and we're just kind of learning as we go. All right, that's the bulk of what I had. As I kind of started right there, we continue to work with you and all the customers out there that are running into these issues. Keep calling us. We're going to be a little confused at times too, but we're hearing similar things from multiple groups. Our main thing is to just identify how to do it in OASIS as easy as possible, just so we can track it and just get on to the next thing we have to do. Basically, how do we focus on the sale and not trying to track tariffs? The Charge Manager tool isn't new. It is in beta. It will go out in the June release. If you want part of the beta process, just let support know. But we have folks taking a look at it right now that kind of helped us with the concept here. But most important, let us know what you're seeing and how we can help. That's what we're about. Any questions? Quiet group. All right. Well, that's all I had. That was the content. I want to keep it well within 1 hour. Uh, if you have anything for us, just let us know. Support real quick. I always like to end on that. If you go into help and about, it'll tell you the same information on the show right here, whether it's the online version and the desktop version. Basically, support a lot of our links out there, but support at oasissalessoftware.com or 501-843-6750. We need to take out the fax line because we finally got rid of it. So 501-843-6750. All right. Thank you very much and have a good day.